Part 7. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 61. His voice was not quiet, and Lulin heard it clearly. But now he is in a good mood and is not ready to be acquainted with this little brat. Without Sujiajia and Guoyuez, everyone's atmosphere is actually better. After finishing the meal soon, everyone, both young and old, picked up their bowls and went to wash the dishes honestly. Only Tangguan and Tolosi did not go. Those who cook have the right not to wash the dishes. At night, when it was getting late, the fat director ran in with an uneasy look on his face. He looked at Lulin and said the bad news, Jia is no longer here. Lulin wiped Tangguan's face for a moment, and then said, didn't Guoyuez go find her? I looked for it, I looked around everywhere, but couldn't find it. When Lulin heard this, he slowly stood up and looked at the cameras that were turned off around him, and he knew what the fat director had in mind. But he still said, the Lu family has no roots here, so it's hard to find them. The fat director knew that Lulin just wanted his promise, so he said angrily, you still don't know who I am? I won't edit randomly. Without thinking about it, Lulin shook his head, that's not what I meant. I want you to ask the program team to ask the residents next to Xingxin orphanage. The fat director felt something dangerous in his tone, and he wanted to refuse. Although you know that there is something abnormal in Xingxin orphanage, you can't let the people under you take risks, right? They are all ordinary people, working diligently as workers, and they will risk their lives if they offend anyone. Thinking of this, the fat director shook his head, no, Brother Lin, I have to be responsible for other people's lives, we can't do this. Lulin glanced at him and felt that fat director was a person who didn't use his brain when he should use it. When he shouldn't use his brain, the ideas in his mind became wild and unconstrained. How could I let those innocent people detect danger? He is not a devil. Lulin looked at the anxious fat director and knew that the fat boy only meant well. Then he said, I don't mean that. I want you to go and see what people around you think of that orphanage. The program team also needs some feedback from residents, doesn't it? The fat director knew what Lulin meant, but he said, the residents here have a pretty good sense of that orphanage. We came here 2 years ago. They said that the adoption rate of children in this orphanage is very high, and few children will stay in the orphanage for a long time. At this point, the fat director paused and subconsciously looked up at Lulin. Seeing that he was not angry, he continued, except for Zayada who came last time, only Tang Tang has stayed in this orphanage for a long time. After Lulin heard this, he said, you have also been in contact with Tang Tang these days. Do you think Tang Tang is who they say? Of course the fat director knew that Tangguan was not who they said he was. It was precisely because of this that he didn't want to go looking for those people anymore. Who knew what they were planning? However, looking at Lulin's eyes, the long-lost youthful spirit in his heart surged into his heart. Yes. He clearly knows that the truth may be different from what he understands. Finally, the fat director rubbed his bald head and said angrily, I really owe you, I will ask myself tomorrow. Lulin got a satisfactory answer. He patted the fat director on the shoulder and said, Pan Yu, I know you are not the kind of insensitive person. If you were really numb, you wouldn't use your own money to subsidize this show with no prospects. Pan Yu rolled his eyes, then put on his hat and urged, okay, go find someone quickly. Lulin walked out of the door, while Tangguan on the other side pulled at the door frame and looked at the direction Lulin was leaving. There was a bit of worry in his eyes like black grapes. She didn't know why, but panic filled her heart. She wanted to tell Lulin not to go out. It's dangerous outside. But this idea was so strange that Tangguan didn't even know how to talk to Lulin. You could only watch Lulin leave, and then ran out after him. The night swallowed up Tangguan's figure. She looked at the dim street lights and was a little afraid to take steps. However, The desire to protect her brother took over. She gritted her teeth and ran to a darker place. The moment she opened her legs, she seemed to hear a gentle yet powerful voice. "Is a woman." She was saying, "Baby, you will be a brave child, right? I would be proud of you." Tang Wan didn't know who she was, but she just felt that her voice made him sad. She was so sad that she almost cried. The gray rabbit runs under the bright moon, heading towards the darkness. The suffocating darkness almost swallowed Tang Wan's body. In the night, everything seemed to have grown fangs, trying to tear the tiny Tang Wan apart ferociously. She was scared, trembling, and her fingertips were cold. Tang Wan has never told anyone that she is afraid of the dark. She is not naturally afraid of the dark either. Just because he was locked up. Too dark. It's really too dark. I can't see my fingers, and I don't know whether I'm stepping on the ground or the abyss next second. Suddenly, Tang Wan heard Sujiajia's voice, reacted immediately, and ran in the direction of the sound. Sujiajia's voice seemed to be filled with shock and a hint of despair, as if she had encountered something that she was completely unable to handle. Tang Wan is afraid that something will happen to Sujiajia. Although Sujiajia always bullied herself in the past, she could never. You can't just let it go, right? That is also a life. Tang Wan thought of this, stepped up his legs and ran faster. However, when she was about to run, she heard Sujiajia's voice again. "Mom, what are you doing? Why? Why are there so many bones here? Mom, what on earth are you doing?" When Tang Wan heard this, he stretched out his hand and covered his mouth tightly. She opened her eyes wide and saw a clearing through the gaps in the grass and trees. In the clearing, there were many simple tents. Outside the tent, there is an old lamp, which is still making a shrill sound. Dean Su turned his back to the light, and his entire face fell into darkness. She looked at Sujiajia, her tone was colder than ever before, even a little inhuman. "Dean Su, Jiajia, why are you here?" Tang Wan was about to collapse when he saw Sujiajia. With tears in her eyes, she looked at her mother as if she were a stranger. "Mom, come back, you can't do this kind of thing. Mom, come with me and surrender, don't do these things again." This was the first time that Tang Wan saw Sujiajia with such a sad expression. It looked like she was about to die of grief in the night. However, Dean Su, who had always loved Sujiajia, just raised his hand silently. Then he slapped Sujiajia on the face. A pop sound. Like breaking something. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 62. Tang Wan was shocked, so he stretched out his hand and bit the back of his hand. The pain sharpened her focus. Little Sujiajia was slapped on the ground by Dean Su, and struggled for a long time but could not get up from the ground. Dean Su squatted down slowly, his body like a mountain, suppressing all the voices of Sujiajia and Tang Wan. Like a devil. Dean Su helped the trembling Sujiajia up, and then said, "Jiajia, you know, mothers like sensible children. You are very ignorant now. Mom has done a lot of things for you. Do you think that the skirt you are wearing, the things you eat, use and wear, are not given to you by your mother? Anyone can say mom, but you can't." Sujiajia covered her swollen face, looked at the unfamiliar Dean Su in horror, opened her mouth, and whispered, "But this is illegal." Before Sujiajia could say the last few words, she was interrupted by Dean Su. "There is no but." Dean Su looked at Sujiajia condescendingly, as if looking down at a fragile kitten or puppy, with no mercy in his eyes. "If you continue to be disobedient like this, Mom will take you to the tent." Sujiajia swallowed carefully and shook her head quickly. "She don't want to go into that tent. That tent doesn't look like a good thing. It was very smelly inside and had a fishy smell. There are even some things that look like human bones out there." Sujiajia was extremely scared. After being exposed in my previous life, I entered the entertainment industry under the guidance of my mother. However, those young masters and ladies who appeared on the same show as myself were like a flash in the pan, appearing briefly and then disappearing. They did not continue to develop in the entertainment industry, but went home and became shining stars in their respective fields. As for Lu Lin, he broke his leg when he was out one night, and then he withdrew from the circle, and there was no news about him again. When he came back again, his straight legs had been cut off and replaced with mechanical legs, which looked very weird. Sujiajia kept recalling these things in her mind, vaguely guessing something, and made a bold guess in her heart. Is it possible? Did Lu Lin's leg be broken by her mother? However, how could a woman like her mother defeat Lu Lin? Sujiajia is not as smart as the children in Tangwan. If Tangwan knew this information, he would know that there may be many adults hiding in these tents. Moreover, he is a particularly ferocious kind of grown-up who can fight. Tangwan looked at everything in front of him quietly. Although she can't speak, at this time, she obviously can't say a word. Not only that, Tangwan even slowed down his breathing, trying to blend in with the vegetation behind him. Her actions were almost based on her own instincts. Hide oneself instinctively. Obviously, Dinsu will not let Sujiajia go back until Sujiajia has completely integrated into this weird tent. Tangwan saw Dinsu picking up Sujiajia and walking straight to the middle tent, saying, "Don't worry, Mom won't hurt you." The surrounding tents seemed to be unable to hold back their laughter, and they suddenly let out a few intrusive scolds. After a while, Tangwan felt that all the tents were quiet and Dinsu was no longer nearby, so he slowly moved his steps and prepared to leave. She carefully took out the wet tissue from her pocket, then looked at the surrounding vegetation, pressed the tissue under a stone, and kept it for note. Then exit slowly. With a click sound, Tangwan stepped on a dead tree, making a crisp sound in this silent night. Tangwan's heart skipped a beat and he immediately stopped moving. The night is the best camouflage, and the dark clothes on her body can also be regarded as a layer of protection. Random shouting came from the tent, and it didn't even sound like a human voice. Tangwan was born with a high level of empathy. Hearing these painful cries, Tangwan even found it difficult to breathe. It was like someone covering his mouth and nose and was about to drown in the thick night. Tangwan's limbs were cold, but her body seemed to have some instinct. Even though her brain was a little panicked due to nervousness, her body was able to respond correctly at the first time. She stood on tiptoes and curled up into a ball. Under the moon, it looks like a mottled stone. After a while, a skinny woman walked out of the tent. Her feet were shackled, her expression was dull, there was drool hanging from the corners of her mouth, her hair was messy, and it looked like she hadn't washed it for several days. In the cold night, she was only wearing a thin set of clothes, which could only cover a little bit of her skin. But there is something inconsistent about her body, and that is her belly. It was like a balloon being blown up, very scary. There were scars everywhere she was exposed. Some wounds are still bleeding. She looked around, and finally her eyes rested on Tangwan. Tangwan didn't dare to move. She was not even afraid to swallow her saliva. Just hint to yourself in your mind. It's a stone, it's a stone. Fortunately, the woman's gaze only stayed on Tangwan for a while and then looked away. She returned to the tent and never emerged again. Tangwan did not act rashly. She waited until there was another strange noise in the tent before she continued to move. She controlled her stiff body and moved forward cautiously in the darkness. Finally, after leaving this strange place, she started running. Be faster, be faster. There is danger here. It can't be wrong. The look in the sister's eyes just now was asking me for help, to call the police, to save her. Tangwan almost ran with all his strength. Hurry up, have to be faster. However, She is still only a 5-year-old child. Inadvertently, he fell to the ground. Face to the ground, hit hard. His body was in pain, but Tang Wan couldn't care less. She quickly got up from the ground, without even wiping off the dust, and ran back directly. It was also dark along the way. The darkness was like a man-eating monster, swallowing up all the sounds in its belly. Tang Wan seemed to hear voices again in a trance, but this time it was not a gentle female voice, but the voices of some men. Their voices seemed to be oppressive, even more oppressive than the deep, moonless darkness. "Search, someone just ran away, we must find him. The location here must not be exposed. MD, where did this mouse sneak in from, how could it run so fast? Thanks to Liang Si. Today I ordered some crocodile and 2 treasures as a reward. Thanks to Tired Mao, seeing, this is a dot, it's in the name. CA, Book Friends 2023021067 CD, Memories of the New Year, Yao Yao, good morning. Monthly tickets for the 8 treasures of Piao Linjian. Love you. Be more generous. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 63. Tang Wan heard these voices, and countless panic surged in his heart. In her vague memory, she felt that the voices of these people were somewhat familiar, and her body couldn't help but start to tremble. The little rabbit crawled in the dark, trying to find a hiding place. I seemed to hear a female voice comforting myself in a crying voice in my mind. Baby, can I play a game with you? Don't make a sound, just stay in this cupboard and come out at dawn. Tang Wan doesn't remember how he answered. Just a black space suddenly appeared in my mind. She was trying to catch the woman inside. But she couldn't catch her, she could only watch her disappear in front of her. But today, there is no one similar to that woman in front of her anymore, she only has herself. Tang Wan gritted his teeth and moved his body slowly, moving slowly in the darkness. But the man's voice was getting closer and closer to her. Impossible, we've searched all around, and no one is here. That's right, boss, this area belongs to us, how could there be anyone else here? Bah, the man named Boss seemed to spit on the ground, then crushed it hard, and said, didn't a program crew come to film at our place during this time? It's not convenient for everyone to move around. When will their program group leave? There was a click sound, which was the sound of a lighter being turned on. It was particularly abrupt in the silent darkness. Tang Wan pricked up his ears and listened to their conversation. I heard from the ant next door that it will take half a month. Half a month, so long, I don't know where this kind of bird can take pictures if it doesn't poop. The factory in Suyu has been exposed. Let's find a new location. Aren't you going to chase me, boss? What are you chasing after? Those city dwellers are so timid that even they wouldn't dare to come here. Tang Wan heard their voices suddenly disappear, but did not lower his guard. She didn't know why, but her heart kept shouting about danger. I kept shouting in my heart that I can't go out. Don't go out. Hide it well. Tang Wanzhen hid motionless in the darkness, hiding in a corner, with a lot of cold sweat spreading all over his body, but his eyes like black grapes kept staring at the flames jumping not far away. Looks a little calm. After a while, the fire died out and fell on the muddy ground. Then he seemed to lift his foot and crush it on the ground a few times, suppressing the firelight in the darkness. The footsteps were a little heavy, as if they were leaving the same spot. However, Tang Wan did not act rashly. The vigilance and fear in her heart were infinitely magnified in the darkness. She didn't come out of the corner immediately. In this extremely quiet environment, Tang Wan could even hear his own heartbeat. Comma comma. Once again, like a life-threatening charm. Suddenly the man named Boss spoke again, "Tisk, it seems it's really not here. Search somewhere else." "Yes." Tang Wan opened his eyes silently. Sure enough. His actions just now were just a cover-up. They just moved their feet on the spot, bluffing and waiting for them to walk out of the corner. They pretend to be leaving, and if they just step out of the corner, they will catch them. Tang Wan heard their footsteps getting farther and farther this time. Just when she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, a clear phone rang. This time, Tang Wan's heart was in his throat again. At this time, Tang Wan was extremely glad that Lu Lin hadn't had time to buy a children's watch for herself. Otherwise, when they found out that she was missing and called him, she would really not be able to get out. Someone answered the phone and said in a breathy voice, "Hello? What's up? Has someone been there? The labor and management just discovered that someone is walking this way. You said that labor and management pursued the wrong case. Who are you over there? A man in his 20s, or a foreigner, is he from that program team?" Okay, the labor and management know it, let the labor and management wait until it happens." Tang Wan heard the boss's voice and covered his mouth with his hand. Her eyes were wide open and red-rimmed. She took a deep breath of air, which was still mixed with the pungent smell of tobacco. "But I am thinking in my heart. Male in his 20s, a member of the program team. That is not Lu Lin. It turns out that I just ran in the opposite direction. Just missed it with Lu Lin." Tang Wan heard their voices getting farther and farther away, and the last words fell on Tang Wan's ears, like some kind of bad news. "Okay, go catch that man and break his legs. It's really annoying every time someone finds out. We have to move to another place, and the labor and management will be annoyed too." When their voices completely disappeared, Tang Wan emerged from the darkness and ran in the original direction without looking back. The dirt on her face was mixed with tears and blood, falling drop by drop on the gray rabbit suit, and then fell to the ground. Like a spark that has just been extinguished, falling into darkness. Small and ubiquitous. In Tang Wan's mind, Lu Lin reached out to himself and picked up his small and dirty self. It was the way he hugged himself, joked with himself, and ran to his side immediately when he was injured. It was he who broke open the door of the orphanage and held himself in his arms. Tang Wan cherishes the hard-won happiness. Although she is timid, but she has the courage to do whatever it takes. She had nothing and nothing to offer, but it was Lu Lin who took her out of the gloom. Now it's her turn. She will become a brave child. She will become the warrior chosen by the sword of justice. She wants to save her brother. People's potential is endless. Even small individuals can bloom flowers of courage in extremely harsh environments. Even if that small individual is just a flash of fireworks. But if such fireworks exist, someone will see them. As long as you see it, one day it will connect the city with fire and illuminate the darkness. Tang Wan ran back to the villa with all his strength. There were not many people guarding here. The adults all went to help, but they didn't know that they were running in the wrong direction. Tang Wan's mind was in a mess. She was thinking about Lu Lin, Sujiajia, and what those men said. Perhaps this place gave the program team a wrong message from the beginning. The program team did not have the right path at all. It was just Tang Wan who, relying on his intuition, stumbled to the right place. At this moment, a figure suddenly stopped in front of Tang Wan. Tang Wan subconsciously raised his head, looked at Pei Yunzhou in front of him, opened his mouth, and realized that he couldn't make a sound. Tang Wan's tears suddenly fell down. The beads were connected one by one and smashed on the ground. Her heart was anxious. She stretched out her hand and made sign language over and over again. "Save brother. Go and save them quickly. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him." Author, Do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 64. Tangwan has never been more disgusted than he is now that he can't speak. Pei Yunzhou looked at the little cub who was in a state of embarrassment and exuding an aura of despair, and the smile that had been hanging on his lips all year round fell. He knew that Tangwan was a sensible child. She will cry, but not often. But now, it was clear that not a single sad sound spread from her mouth, but it was like a roaring tsunami, drowning her. Tangwan covered his dirty hands with his bunny suit, patted Pei Yunzhou's hand, pointed to the distance and said anxiously. However, Pei Yunzhou is not Fu Wenzi, and he cannot understand sign language. He only knew that the child was in a hurry. But I don't know what she is expressing. But Pei Yunzhou's education since he was a child told him that at times like this, he should not lose control of his position. So he picked up Tangwan and took her to Fu Wenzi, saying, "Tell us how you want to tell us slowly, don't panic. Don't panic, we are all here." Tangwan seemed to realize what Pei Yunzhou had not said. She suddenly reacted, took out the tablet from her pocket, and wrote and drew on it with her fingers. But she was too panicked, and the dirt on her hands fell on the clean screen, leaving dark marks, which was very unsightly. Tangwan's tears fell on the tablet one drop at a time, and then she wiped them away with the back of her hand. With trembling hands, she wrote word by word. "They pointed the wrong place to my brother, and Sujiajia was not where they pointed. Sujiajia was kidnapped by her mother. Those bad guys were following her brother. They wanted to harm her brother. The place where Sujiajia was tied was a large flat area. Their accents were very strong and they were all locals. They are bad guys, they need to take a lot of people, and they need to call the police." Tangwan's handwriting was a little crooked because he wrote too fast and some of his arms and legs were missing, but Pei Yunzhou could see it at a glance. His eyes darkened, knowing that this matter was not something that could be solved easily. At this moment, Pei Yunzhou happened to walk in front of Fu Wenzi's house. Fu Wenzi was wearing black pajamas. He looked at Tangwan, who was dirty and with tears in his eyes. He was slightly startled, and then asked, "What's wrong?" Pei Yunzhou was determined not to worry these children too much. He just shook his head, placed Tangwan in front of Fu Wenzi, and said, "Can you stay with Tang Tang for a while? I want to find your dad." Fu Wenzi nodded and watched Pei Yunzhou go upstairs. Then he turned around and looked at Tangwan, who looked uneasy. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped Tangwan's face. This wiping is like a hand of dirt. Tangwan didn't have time to feel embarrassed. Her eyes kept falling on Pei Yunzhou, feeling very anxious. But Fu Wenzi just stood in front of her and asked in a calm manner that was not suitable for a child, "Can you tell me what happened?" Tangwan's eyes fell on Fu Wenzi, then he raised his hand and signed quickly. Fu Wenzi nodded while repeating. "They have a base where many people are imprisoned. There are signs of abuse, there is a pregnant woman, and it is suspected of illegal imprisonment. Sujiajia was detained by her mother, and the information Lulin and the program team received was wrong information. The people around me have a very close relationship with Dean Su, so the surrounding residents may be covering up. They are accomplices, they all seem to be from the same hometown. It's very dangerous, the police need to be called, and a lot of people are needed." Tangwan's movements finally stopped. Fu Wenzi raised his wrist. The children's watch on it was always on, flashing the light of the call. He said in a voice that had not faded from his childlike voice, "The above is the complete report. Father, please pay attention to safety." Tangwan has never seen Fu Wenzi like this. It is calm and steady. This kind of Fu Wenzi made her feel somewhat familiar, but this familiarity did not come from someone she had known during this time. It is the shadow in her dream. Gentle yet powerful. Tangwan wanted to follow Pei Yunzhou and save Lulin. However, as soon as she opened her legs, she was held down by Fu Wenzi, and then she heard Fu Wenzi say, "That is a matter for adults, Tang Tang, you haven't grown up yet. Children have the right to hide in a safe house. Tang Wan blinked her eyes, and the dirty water on her eyelashes fell down, leaving two deep marks on her fair face, which looked a little funny. But no one could laugh. Fu Wenzi took Tang Wan's scarred hand and led her into the warm house. Tang Wan looked at the clean ground and subconsciously retracted his feet. She is too dirty. However, Fu Wenzi ignored Tang Wan's refusal. He directly picked up Tang Wan, and then carried Tang Wan to the bathroom. The dirty handkerchief was wiped clean by Fu Wenzi, and then he gently wiped Tang Wan's face. Washed Tang Wan's hands clean with warm water. Finally, Fu Wenzi took out an unworn white dress from his room and handed it to Tang Wan. I'm going to rest here today, please change your clothes. Fu Wenzi has always been precocious. He also has other younger brothers and sisters in his family, and he takes good care of these children. It's just that those younger brothers and sisters are not as good and obedient as Tang Wan. Tang Wan actually hasn't settled down yet. She is just being pushed around by Fu Wenzi like a puppet on strings. She picked up the clean clothes blankly, then walked into the bathroom, took off the dirty rabbit suit, and walked into the bathtub that had been filled with water. Then slowly it sank. The water gradually spread to the nasal cavity, and breathing brought the water into the body, causing a feeling of suffocation. The familiar pain caused a rejection reaction in the body, making the numb Tang Wan suddenly wake up. She struggled to hold the edge of the bathtub with both hands, then opened her eyes wide and looked around. She ran back. Tang Wan quickly cleaned himself up and walked out wearing white short-sleeved shorts. Fu Wenzi took out a mini notebook. There were some numbers and symbols on the screen, which were so densely packed that Tang Wan couldn't understand them. She stood beside Fu Wenzi obediently and said nothing. Just watching quietly. Fu Wenzi still felt the heat around him, turned his head subconsciously, and saw Tang Wan, whose hair had not even been dried. His eyes fell on Tang Wan's arms and legs, and his eyes darkened. Tang Tang asked casually, "Does Tang Tang still remember how she got to the orphanage?" Tang Wan didn't know why Fu Wenzi was suddenly interested in this topic. She thought about it, raised her hand, and made some sign language. "Cannot remember. Just a vague impression. I was not sent to an orphanage at birth." Tang Wan's hand paused for a moment, and the expression on his face was a little distressed. Then he gestured again. "It seems to have been sent in. Thanks for the reward from 1am and Lazy 213. Thanks to Xiaoguliangxian, 124 ++++++, Fendachi Zhuang * 552, the symbol in front of this name cannot be typed, damn it, but I believe Bayaz I can still recognize it, spicy pear girlfriend, quilt, dumpling stuffing, Kanako, Ajiu doesn't want to be let down, Ge Fang, today is also the day I want to be the king of the sea, book friend 2024-012-4524, Chamumu, the monthly ticket for the 12 treasures. Will one day my words of thanks turn into a chapter? Oh my God, I love you. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 65. Fu Wenzi's voice was a little muffled. He said and looked at the code flashing on the computer screen in front of him without making a sound. Tang Wan on the side didn't know what was in front of him, so he stayed quietly beside Fu Wenzi. She was still a little uneasy just because she was in a strange place. She could only curl up on the sofa and sort out her thoughts in her heart. Speaking of it, it seems that I really haven't thought carefully about who sent me to the orphanage. Tang Wan's previous memory was very vague. This was not caused by her young age, but by the self-defense produced by the brain to protect the subject after being frightened, and the sequelae of forgetting the pain. The body can be accompanied by muscle memory. Under certain circumstances, it will be connected with the memory at that time, creating a feeling of déjà vu. However, Tangwan can't tell the difference. Some may be my own memories, while others may be the Mandela effect. Memory may deceive oneself. Tangwan cannot tell whether it is true or false. She once suspected that the Xingsan orphanage was a huge cage with many eyes observing her in the dark. It's like the Truman Show. This is a grand fixed point performance. And I feel like an animal with a stereotype reaction, stumbling around in this closed world and unable to find its direction. She is too young. She can't make a sound and is locked in a world of black and white. One step forward into the abyss, one step back to be swallowed by darkness. Being able to seize this opportunity is a blessing from God, and it is also the best result of self-struggle. Things can't get any worse. Tangwan clearly knows this. But she had no way to prove that her memory was true. She could only look for clues of her true past from every corner of the Xingsan orphanage. Those vague memories are supporting Tangwan, telling herself over and over again that her world is not like this. Fu Wenzi looked at the quiet Tangwan with his peripheral vision, thinking about the news he had received. The message states that Tangwan has been staying in the orphanage all this time, and she did not come from behind. Information shows that she was an abandoned baby. This is completely different from what Tangwan said. Fu Wenzi did not think that Tangwan was deceiving him. He has eyes and ears himself, so he can know what kind of child Tangwan is. She can't lie. Then these two mutual paradoxes are very interesting. Is the entire group lying? How many people must have participated in such a huge lie? Furthermore, isn't Tangwan an ordinary child? Why do they go to all the trouble to tell such a big lie? Fu Wenzi was thinking about it, and the movements of his hands did not stop. Then he chuckled. Unless Tangwan is not an ordinary child. Her parentage is in doubt. Someone took black sand and covered the treasure over and over again, trying to cover up her innate light. He even wanted to replace the civet cat with the prince and replace the treasure with glass. Unexpectedly, the plan failed. Tangwan looked at Fu Wenzi, who suddenly laughed and tilted his head, a little confused. Is he laughing? Although the corners of his mouth only curved a little. Tangwan thought, stood up and walked to the bathroom. She had to wash her clothes before Lu Lin came back. That was something Lu Lin gave to him. Tangwan liked it very much and cherished it. Night falls, and there are bad things lurking in the darkness. Lu Lin is very skilled, but he never shows it. Things for self-defense should not be displayed at any time. They should be a surprise when necessary. But Lu Lin didn't expect that he would see a surprise here. He was trapped in a ravine. And there was a group of people looking for him. Lu Lin got separated from his people. He really didn't expect that the mountain roads here were so rugged and complicated, and he got lost as soon as he walked in. Moreover, the surrounding signal was not good, and Lu Lin's mobile phone even lost signal several times. It is probably not a surprise for someone in this wilderness to be injured or dead. It's because I was careless. Lu Lin clearly realized this when he entered this place with no signal. The water in this backward place is deeper than Lu Lin imagined. The poor mountains and harsh waters bring out unruly people, and this applies to any era. Thinking of this, Lu Lin felt a little lucky that Tangwan did not follow him out and did not experience such a dangerous moment. Tangwan has been exposed to enough dangers, but Lu Lin still wants Tangwan to live a more stable life. Suddenly, Lu Lin heard the sound of footsteps stepping on dead branches and leaves, and hid his cell phone behind him to avoid being discovered by them. Those accented words kept falling around Lu Lin. Did they find us? Probably not, that figure looks like a child. Suyu and her baby have also found us. I feel like we need to change places. From a labor perspective, Suyu and her son should be killed. It's really annoying us now. Oh, don't say it, don't say it. Find the Kazakh man quickly, find that person and kill him, otherwise when they find this place, we won't be able to eat and walk around. Lu Lin heard their conversation, and the expression on his face became more and more serious. Looking at their indifference to human life, it was as if they were discussing an insignificant ant. Obviously, these people have crossed the bottom line of human beings and attacked their companions. Lulin did not expect that Fatty Pan would choose such a chosen place. Fortunately, these people did not stay in this position for too long and left quickly. Lulin cautiously walked out of the ravine. However, as soon as he took a few steps, he saw Mr. Fu waiting for him outside. He had already changed out of his suit, and as if he hadn't noticed the mess on Lulin's body, he said, "Go back first, Tang Tang has been found." Lulin was stunned for a moment, and then realized that Tang Wan had also run out. It's just that it's not a good time to reminisce about old times, so he nodded and left here. Mortal matters are not something that a small actor like me can solve. Even the Lu family behind me can't. This is the bottom line. Just before leaving, Mr. Fu said, "Don't blame her, she's just too worried about you." Lulin was stunned for a moment, and then walked into the car parked on the side of the road without any other reaction. He didn't want to blame Tang Wan. He just wanted to see Tang Wan. I want to know what she was thinking when she wanted to go out despite knowing the danger. Doesn't she have any thoughts about herself? Lulin has never seen such a child. I have never seen such a person before. In her heart, she is always the last one. Sacrifice everything for others, with a self-destructive spirit of dedication. Lulin didn't know what Tang Wan had gone through. She doesn't know who is shaping her spiritual world in her missing memory. He just wants Tang Wan to stop being so miserable. He is willing to give Tang Wan lots and lots of candies. Don't be so sensible, and don't be so sad. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 66. Chapter 66, Be good and stop crying. Ah, Tang Wan opened his mouth and sneezed a little. It was getting late. At this time, Tang Wan was already sleeping on the bed Lulin made for her. Her head felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and little by little, she started to feel sleepy and bubbling. Fu Wenzi saw that Tang Wan was a little shaky, so he stood up, took out a plush blanket from his room, and put it on Tang Wan's body. Tang Wan stretched out her hand and squeezed the blanket. She was completely covered in the blanket, except for her beautiful little face. She looked at Fu Wenzi like a ragdoll cat. Still the kind of ragdoll cat that is not very family. Fu Wenzi thought casually in his heart. I feel that Tang Wan sometimes looks exactly like his cat named Biu Biu. Same pretty, just as well behaved, and just as guarded against people. It's just that Tang Wan is a little different from it. Tang Wan will protect everyone, as if it is her innate instinct. Even if the person she wants to save has nothing to do with her, or even that person has bullied her, she doesn't take it to heart. Fu Wenzi couldn't understand Tang Wan. He couldn't understand Tang Wan's logic. In his eyes, he will only lend a helping hand according to his mood if he ensures that his own interests will not be lost. You can help, but you cannot hurt yourself. This has always been the educational philosophy of the Fu family. However, Tang Wan is different. She is like a piece of translucent glass, an ice jade pendant, or ice crystal chalcedony. The way you look at her will determine the kind of feedback you will get. She is wonderful, even selfless. In just a few days, Fu Wenzi even had the idea of exploring Tang Wan. I want to see what it would be like for a saint like Tang Wan to be infected with selfishness and partiality. Perhaps she had selfish motives for a long time, but it was not for herself. Her selfish motives were towards Lulin, who was the first to discover this gem. Fu Wenzi looked at Tang Wan for too long, which made Tang Wan feel strange. She looked at Fu Wenzi with questions in her eyes. It seems to be saying, "What's wrong?" Fu Wenzi shook his head and turned to look at the news. The Fu family, like the Lu family, can only stand outside of danger. They are both serious businessmen, so naturally they will not step on thunder. Even his own father would only lead the way for those people and then come back. Thinking of those people who had no hesitation, Fu Wenzi's eyes also fell on Tang Wan. At this moment, Fu Wenzi suddenly realized whose character Tang Wan resembled. It is very much like those warriors who rush towards danger without hesitation. Sacrifice your life for others and for your beliefs. Tang Wan was really sleepy, but she couldn't worry about Lu Lin, so she just stared there and held on tightly. Finally, Fu Wenzi couldn't stand it anymore, patted Tang Wan on the head, and then said, let's go rest. Children will not grow taller if they don't rest." In Tang Wan's limited memory, she had never heard such gentle persuasion. She looked a little dazed because of her sleepiness, and was led by Fu Wenzi to the guest room. Fu Wenzi also knew that there were differences between men and women, so he just stood at the door and watched Tang Wan crawl into bed like a little turtle, and then turned on a night light for her. "Good night." Tang Wan looked at his leaving figure and replied in his mind, "Good night." Tang Wan was still full of uneasiness as he lay in a strange environment. She exhaled quietly, and her mouth smelled of sweet strawberries. It was the smell of the disposable toiletries that Fu Wenzi just picked up. Coincidentally, the taste is exactly the same as the toothpaste Lu Lin bought for Tang Wan. It gave her some peace of mind. He didn't take back the blanket Fu Wenzi brought, he just put it on the outside of the soft quilt, which smelled of him. Like woody fragrance, it is a silent and deep smell. Tang Wan opened her eyes and her heartbeat was fast. She blinked and tears fell. She gritted her teeth and didn't say a word. "Where is Lu Lin? Is he safe?" Little Tang Wan curled up into a ball and held her head in her hands. Sadness spread in the darkness, causing her to collapse helplessly. The pretended calmness deceived Fu Wenzi, but in fact, Tang Wan's worries never stopped. Darkness devours people's courage, and despair spreads like a tide. Pairs of hands stretched out from the darkness seemed to grab Tang Wan's throat, pulling her little by little toward the silently turbulent deep sea. Tang Wan stood up from the bed tremblingly, arching his back and breathing heavily. "It seems like I really feel suffocated." "Ah," she squeezed out a syllable from her throat in a low voice. Struggling to press the button. The huge quilt was like an inescapable prison, and she drew the ground on this soft bed as a prison. The stiffness of her limbs made her extremely disappointed with herself. Why? Why can't I be stronger? If I had screamed out at that time, wouldn't those people have gone to Lu Lin? Then the one who comes back won't be me, it will be Lu Lin. Sanity is on the verge of collapse, and only persistence is left to save itself. Tang Wan was sweating. They followed Tang Wan's thin body, turning into sweat and dripping on the sheets, turning into a wet puddle. "It's so painful." Somatization reaction, making the body very painful. Tang Wan raised her hand tremblingly, wanting to pick up the cup on the table and take a sip of water to relieve her discomfort. However, she really didn't have the strength. The moment his cold hand touched the cup, he trembled and the cup fell on the plush carpet. There was no sound, just water scattered all over the place and unable to return. Tang Wan didn't want to be a burden to others. She stood up with strong willpower and wanted to get off the bed. However, the bed is still at a certain height. As a child, of course she cannot reach the ground. She stretched out her hand to reach for the cup. However, her physical discomfort prevented her from controlling her movements. She opened her hands vigorously and tried hard to pick up the cup, but her whole body slipped towards the ground. At this moment, a figure rushed in, grabbed Tang Wan with a big hand, and picked up Tang Wan. There is a familiar voice in my ears. "What's wrong? Want to drink water? Are you feeling unwell?" Tang Wan raised his head blankly and looked at Lu Lin, who still had a tired look on his face. His mouth tightened and tears fell. Finally Tang Wan took the initiative to reach out and hug Lu Lin's neck. All the persistence and defensiveness in her body faded away like a tide at this moment. The feeling of desperate despair suddenly disappeared. Ah! Ah! Like saying it over and over again. It's my fault, it's my lack of courage. If I step out of the corner and use myself to attract their attention, Lu Lin will come back earlier. But Lu Lin just used his hands that were bandaged like mummies, patting Tang Wan's back again, and said in that nice voice, "Why are you crying? I'm fine, aren't I? Be good, stop crying." The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 67. Fu Wenzi, who was standing outside the door, looked at the strange scene in the room and looked at Tang Wan with his precious red and phoenix eyes. No, the same. It's really different. In Tang Wan's heart, it seemed that Lu Lin was the only one she could trust. Fu Wenzi walked downstairs quietly without disturbing the two of them. It's just that he's thinking. Different from Tang Wan's innate ability to empathize, Fu Wenzi was precocious and not so sensitive to people's emotions. He mostly acts rationally and rarely pays for his emotions. But Tang Wan was an accident. Maybe it was because Tang Wan couldn't speak, or maybe it was because she looked like his own ragdoll cat, so Fu Wenzi felt more close to her. In fact, it was not just Fu Wenzi who was close to Tang Wan. Tang Wan is liked by almost everyone. Who wouldn't like such a well-behaved child? Not to mention she is so beautiful. Children are all obsessed with appearance, and they don't like those who don't look good. Except Sujiajia. Fu Wenzi sat on the sofa, took out Guoyue's photo from under the computer, and then made a light cross. It seems that we have to let her go back. In the room, Lu Lin coaxed Tang Wan softly and was very patient. I haven't even settled the score with you yet, and you're crying right here. Tang Wan blinked his eyes, which were washed by tears and looked particularly bright. Lu Lin just rubbed Tang Wan's head, messed up her neatly combed hair, and then said, "You ran out so late, are you risking your life? There are a lot of bad people out there. If a well-behaved kid like you is caught, they won't let you back. Tang, you can't always be like this." Tang Wan heard Lu Lin's words and turned his head slowly, as if he didn't want to hear it. This is not the first time Lu Lin has said this to Tang Wan. But Tang Wan couldn't do it. Children who are useless will be abandoned. This is what Xingxin orphanage told Tang Wan, and it is also the way of survival that Tang Wan invented. In order to survive in this bizarre world, Tang Wan is also trying his best. Lu Lin saw Tang Wan like this and knew that Tang Wan was not prepared to listen to him. It's also pretty good. This little kid who has never been self-assertive has now learned to resist those close to him. Lu Lin was very pleased, so he held Tang Wan up high and put it down gently. But I have made up my mind to equip Tang Wan with a child's watch and a locator when she gets back to prevent her from running around. Tang Wan didn't know what he would face next, so he grabbed Lu Lin's clothes and refused to let him go before going to bed. What can Lu Lin do? Of course I stayed with her. He patted Tang Wan on the back and sang an unfamiliar lullaby. It was like the things that fate had stingily given to Tang Wan were slowly sent back by Lu Lin at this moment. Tang Wan blinked and slowly closed his eyes. There will definitely be a good dream tonight. She is sure. The next day, just after dawn, Lu Lin knocked on the door with a plate of fried eggs and bread. Tang, come out for breakfast. Ah! Tang Wan heard Lu Lin's voice, responded quickly, and ran out of the room. She was still wearing Fu Wenzi's clothes from yesterday, and the big clothes made Tang Wan even smaller. Lu Lin just glanced at it, turned around, and took out a large coat from the suitcase he had brought this morning. It is the kind of green frog clothes that look like small cakes. Tang Wan put it on obediently without any resistance. Tangwan knew that Lulin just wanted to cover up his scar. These scars are not pretty. More importantly, Lulin didn't like having strange eyes look at him. Tangwan heard many voices saying that Lulin was not an easy person to get along with. But to Tangwan, Lulin is the best person in the world. He is the most gentle. Lulin also prepared breakfast for Fu Wenzi and Mr. Fu. It's just that they didn't eat. The dark bread was eaten only by Tangwan noodles whose color did not change. When it fell into my mouth, it had a burnt taste, which was really not delicious. But for Tangwan, this was the best breakfast she had ever had. She started eating alone, but now someone prepared meals for her. Or with your own hands. Cook for yourself with your own hands. Tangwan was devouring the food until the end. She ate very fiercely, as if she was starving. Like a person who has been hungry for many days and finally eats food, or like a traveler who has been walking in the desert for many days and discovers an oasis. No one laughed at Tangwan, only Lulin picked up a glass of warm milk and placed it in front of Tangwan. Said in his pleasant voice, "I will learn to cook like you in the future." Tangwan slowly raised his head and saw Lulin making an unskilled sign to him. And that sign language means, "Let's go home." Tangwan felt as if his heart had been soaked in sour water. She lowered her head and took a bite of the dark bread. It is bitter in the mouth, but sweet in the heart. It's still a little sour. Her eyes were a little sore, but this time, Tangwan did not cry. She didn't want to cry at such a beautiful moment. Lulin continued, "We will take a flight home later, and I will take you to see your sister. And that kid Luzi, they left last night, and our two families are the only ones left here. Go 11 and the others left their contact information when they left. When we get home, I will take you to choose children's watches. You can also send messages to them then. And for your little tablet, let's pick out a shell that we like so that you don't have to worry about it slipping when you hold it. Toulouse invited you to visit his manor, but I declined for you." At this point, Lulin paused, took a sip of water, and spoke again. "He wants to kidnap you before you are even acquainted with us at our house. He is not a good person, so don't play with him." Tangwan nodded. In front of Lulin, Tangwan was like a fluffy kitten with its belly spread out. Very well behaved. Tangwan also knew that Lulin was not a talkative person. He does it for himself. Learn sign language for yourself and speak more words for yourself. Since he couldn't speak, Lulin spoke up for him. Realizing this, Tangwan took another bite of bread. The bread is burnt or spoiled. Lulin helps Tangwan. Lulin is good. After Tangwan finished his breakfast, Fu Wenzi, who had not spoken a word, suddenly took out a piece of paper and handed it to Tangwan. Written above is Fu Wenzi's contact information. Fu Wenzi was still the same as when Tangwan first met him. He was a dignified young man, and his every move was politely distant. But Tangwan always felt that under Fu Wenzi's calm appearance, there was a kind of unique madness. He is just pretending to be himself quietly. Suddenly, Tangwan's hand was held by Fu Wenzi. The cold hands were like the temperature of early spring, making Tangwan tremble slightly. Then she heard the voice that did not lose its childlike voice said, "Add me. We are friends, aren't we? Tang tang. He, you can't think of it? I have one more update. Thanks to the three treasures Do You Like Candy, Fox Dudu and Kanako for their rewards. Thanks to Xiaodondan, Do You Like Candy, Janie, Who Dudu, Only Freedom, Book Friends 854 962, Why Are the Numbers Here Suddenly Gone, Kanako, Xiao's Hizzy, Yun Mo Abyss, Yu, Even Time, Book Friends 26792, This Number No Longer Exists, Ji Ling Yu, The Monthly Tickets of the 13 Treasures. Love you. Hope everyone likes this little update, hee. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 68. Tang Wan's eyes followed Fu Wenzi's hand and landed on his face. Then nodded. After Tang Wan and Lu Lin got on the private plane, Mr. Fu looked at his son and suddenly said, "Yesterday, you asked your mother to give Guoyu as an endorsement." "Yeah," Fu Wenzi responded, "What's wrong, father?" How could Mr. Fu not understand his own children? He knows that Fu Wenzi is precocious and always thinks one step at a time before doing things. There may be other reasons why he suddenly endorsed Guoyu's. After all, Mr. Fu knows better than anyone else that his children are not well-intentioned philanthropists. Fu Wenzi saw that his father did not answer him, but just smiled, his eyebrows curved, and he could still see a bit of Mr. Fu's elegance. "What can I do? I am still a child, father." In the end, Mr. Fu was soft-hearted towards the child he watched grow up, and was unwilling to think about the reasons why he did what he did. Anyway, judging from the results of the matter, Guoyu's career has also improved to a higher level. Having received Fu's support, there should be something in return. This is Fu's family rule. Interests are the strongest bond between people, and what Fu wants to do is to become the strongest party in the bond. Only giving, no rejection. Mr. Fu shook his head and said no more. Fu Wenzi looked at the direction in which the plane was going away, looking forward to meeting him next time. On the other side, Tang Wan and Lu Lin returned to the Lu family's old house together. On the way, Tang Wan was a little surprised that Lu Lin didn't mention Sujiajia. It seems that all the children have said that only Sujiajia's whereabouts are unknown. "I don't know if she has been saved." When Tang Wan asked, Lu Lin looked at Tang Wan with a strange expression. After Tang Wan fell asleep, the entire area was searched all over. Except for a few empty tents and some blood stains that were red to black, there were no other clues. However, the identification results of those blood stains were shocking. Because there is no way to know the identity of the blood. In other words, a person who bleeds is a criminal. This brought everyone's search to a deadlock. However, when they went to look for Sujiajia, they found that she had returned to the orphanage and was with her mother. Dean Su's eyes were swollen from crying. He said that he felt uncomfortable watching those people slandering his daughter on the internet, so he took the initiative to find Sujiajia. She even wanted Sujiajia to quit the show. Of course, the liquidated damages were too high, so in the end, the matter had to be left alone. The police officer went to contact Sujiajia, but there was nothing unusual about Sujiajia. She was just a little more uneasy than the well-behaved and sensible person she was on the show. But there are no wounds on her body, and she can get answers if she asks questions. In other words, after working hard all night, everyone got nothing. Lu Lin did not intend to talk to Tang Wan about these bad things. He just answered Tang Wan vaguely, "Sujiajia is fine." She went back with Dean Su. It is a coincidence that Guoyu's, who was supposed to take Sujiajia back, suddenly had a lot of work and no time to accompany Sujiajia, so he agreed to Dean Su's proposal to take Sujiajia back. It can be regarded as a strange combination of circumstances and a solution that satisfies everyone. Tang Wan felt a little strange. She clearly remembered that what she saw last night was Sujiajia and Dean Su, as well as those who wanted to catch her. But why did Sujiajia and Dean Su end up in an orphanage? Is it possible? In fact, are the orphanage and that place connected? The memory fragments in Tang Wan's mind finally became a complete picture, and all the fog suddenly became clear. No wonder, Dean Su doesn't like running to the back hill by himself. If the back mountain is their stronghold, you will find something abnormal if you run over there. Even if I am just a child. Those children who were adopted, those who went to play with Dean Su in the back mountains. Have you really been adopted, or have you really gone to play? Tang Wan's fingers were a little cold because of his guess. She could not help but think divergently and deduce things in her mind. Unfortunately, these are all her guesses. She has no evidence. If the orphanage really killed the children, then living alone is the biggest rebuttal. If they were strangling the life of their children, why didn't they themselves die? Tang Wan didn't know what she should do, but she didn't want to give up this discovery. At this moment, a pair of hands patted Tang Wan's head, calling Tang Wan's attention back. Tang Wan slowly raised his head, looked at Lulin, and heard his voice ringing beside her, "What are you thinking about?" Tang Wan lowered his head, then raised his head, showing a soft smile. She shook her head. "You cannot say this kind of thing, as it will bring danger to Lulin. Although she is young, she knows that some things cannot be said in the sun." Lu Ziyi had been waiting for Tang Wan at his old house for a long time. He heard the sound of the plane stopping. He was riding a custom-made motorcycle at an endless parking lot, carrying a walkie-talkie and shouting to it. "Uncle, is Tang Tang here?" Lulin was almost deafened by the voice of this brat. He sounded disgusted, but he couldn't hide the smile on his face. I'm back, but you're not allowed to take your aunt to play in dangerous places. Put away your little carts, and your bows and arrows." Lu Ziyi's voice came from the walkie-talkie, with a hint of distortion. "Then can I take Tang Tang to play shooting? Zixi and I have made an appointment to go to Chenchuo's house in a few days. Does Chenchuo know you are going?" "Oh, he doesn't know. If we go directly, he can't kick us out." Lulin was speechless about his inconspicuous nephew. Thinking of Chenchuo's cold temperament, he felt that there was a high chance that they would be kicked out. Then he said, "Then you and Go 11 go by yourself, don't bring your aunt to embarrass yourself." After finishing speaking, Lulin bent down, picked up Tang Wan, who was wearing a red hanfu, and bumped her hands as if weighing her. Tang Wan heard Lu Ziyi's dissatisfied voice on the other end of the intercom, and looked curiously at the little black thing in Lulin's hand. "Uncle, don't be like this. Zixi will only play with me if I bring Tang Tang." Lulin snorted coldly when he heard this. What a good boy, at a young age he knows how to ask his elders to seduce girls. If he hadn't known that Lu Ziyi was clueless and really just wanted to play with Go 11 and Chenchuo, he would definitely beat this brat up. So Lulin looked at Tang Wan, who was as cute as a little red envelope, and his voice softened. "Tang Tang, do you want to go to Chenchuo's house to play shooting?" Tang Wan has never been invited to play with children, so when she heard this question, she still didn't react. "I don't know when it started." She seemed to have lost her lonely life. I clicked the wrong button, it's too early. Woohoo, it's also the third update today. Love you guys. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 69. Tang Wan blinked and looked at Lulin's face, wondering what Lulin was thinking. However, Lulin spoke again, "Don't look at me, do you want to go?" Tang Wan has read about shooting competitions from books. But she has not seen the entity. She probably wanted to take a look. Look at what is in the book and turn it into a concrete existence. So Tang Wan nodded. Expressed the idea of wanting to go. She was a little uneasy and even felt a little greedy. Being by Lulin's side, it seemed that no matter what he did, he would be satisfied. But this is not right. Tang Wan knew that Lulin was not related to her, and she had nothing to exchange with Lulin. She did not deserve these kindnesses. However, Lulin grabbed Tang Wan's cold little hand, frowned and rubbed her hand, and said impatiently into the intercom, okay, let's go play with you. Remember to tell Chenchuo, don't go to other people's houses to play without saying a word, you don't understand any manners." After finishing speaking, he pinched Tang Wan's face again, put her cold hand into his neck, and muttered, "The weather is getting warmer, why are my hands still so cold?" My mother asks someone to make tea for you. You can drink a big cup of it later to warm yourself up. Many people will come to you later. If you don't like them, just ignore them. You are my sister and you can express your own preferences. Don't wrong yourself. Tang Wan heard Lu Lin's words and nodded in agreement. During these days, Tang Wan actually had a real feeling in every word of affirmation from Lu Lin. The coldness faded away in the company of Lu Lin and the other cubs, as if winter was over and spring was ushering in. After leaving Xingxin orphanage, Tang Wan's life seemed to really start. From darkness and chaos, come to the world. The Lu family's old house was very lively, but there weren't actually many people there. Those who can come to the Lu family's old residence are those who know what they should do. They have a similar temperament to Lu Lin. Most men seem to be difficult to get along with, but in fact they are protective of their shortcomings. On the other hand, women are very much like Grandma Lu, as gentle as her. Even a little naive. Tang Wan watched them look at her with a lot of pity, as if they wanted to come over and hug her, but she stopped where she was. A sister who looked very similar to Lu Lin waved to Tang Wan and said, "Tang Tang, come here and show me." Tang Wan glanced at Lu Lin and found that he nodded towards her. Tang Wan just walked over. Then he was picked up by her. Tang Wan slowly opened his eyes, like a frightened kitten. Somewhat at a loss. This embrace is very different from Lu Lin's embrace. She is more gentle, and her embrace has a feeling of tolerance. Soft, as if filling the emptiness of oneself. Tang Wan didn't know how to place her hands for a moment, so she could only pull her hands into fists and hide them quietly under her sleeves, so that no one could see her embarrassment. However, Lu Yao saw Tang Wan's movements clearly. She is already a mother, how could she not see through Tang Wan's disguise? Little Tang Wan was standing in the unfamiliar living room just now, restraining his restless soul and asking for help. But when someone actually hugged her, she timidly withdrew her expectant eyes. While longing, at the same time giving up. Struggling to save oneself. Lu Yao touched Tang Wan's head with pity, took out the children's watch she had prepared early from her bag and put it on Tang Wan's wrist. He also took out a black card, put it in Tang Wan's hand, and said generously, "Pocket money. Keep it." Tang Wan didn't know the meaning of the black card. He only knew that it was a gift from this beautiful sister. But Tang Wan is literate and knows that this is a bank card. So she didn't accept it. So he pushed and pointed at Lu Lin, meaning that Lu Lin would give it to him. Lu Yao glanced at her younger brother who was snickering on the side, rolled her eyes angrily, and said to Lu Lin, "What's wrong? You've been coming to our house for so long and you haven't given Tang Tang a black card yet." With that said, he put the black card in his hand into Tang Wan's hand with an attitude that he would not refuse. He was still saying, "I gave this brat his card, how can I deprive you of it?" Tang Wan felt that the tone of these words was somewhat familiar. Thinking about it in my mind, isn't this the grown-up version of Chenchuo? The speech is also so prickly. But unlike Chenchuo, this sister did not speak maliciously. Lu Lin saw that his sister had said this, so he quickly glanced at Tang Tang. Hold it, or this person will become impatient." Tang Wan understood Lu Lin's expression and accepted the black card that Lu Yao brought over. Then he put on the children's watch obediently. Lu Yao pressed Tang Wan's hand, recorded a fingerprint on it, hugged Tang Wan and said to Lu Lin, "This is the latest product, and it is also the brand that everyone uses now." Lu Yao said as she entered the identity information of Tang Wan and Lu Lin and bound them together. Tang Wan looked at this small watch, which contained his information and linked his and Lu Lin's names. It seemed that they were becoming more and more like a family. Lu Ziyi saw Tang Wan put on his watch, hurriedly came to Tang Wan with the skateboard in his arms, and put his children's watch on Tang Wan's watch. With a ding sound, the two watches exchange information with each other. "Hello, welcome to Xiaoe, I am your caring little housekeeper. I have now received a friend request from the applicant Lu Ziyi. Tang Wan was still a little uneasy, so she stretched out her hand and clicked on the consent button. The watch answered again with a gentle-sounding female voice. "Okay, little master, the friend application has been approved, please have a friendly communication with your friends." Tang Wan looked at the unfamiliar screen, pursed his lips and began to learn how to use it. Lu Ziyi, who was on the side, took Tang Wan's hand and led her to the side, patiently talking to Tang Wan about the functions. The two little dumplings got together and kept nodding. Their little faces looked so cute. Lu Lin on the side saw what Lu Yao wanted to say to him, and took the initiative to walk to the corridor outside. Looking down from his position, he happened to see two cubs getting along happily. With a click sound, Lu Yao lit a cigarette, looked at Lu Lin who was lying on the railing, and subconsciously handed him one. However, Lu Lin just took it and held it in his mouth without making any move to light a cigarette. Lu Yao raised her eyebrows and said nothing more. The Si family invited the Lu family to attend the handover ceremony of Lu's new CEO. They specially invited two children. "You can take them with you." Lu Lin did not agree immediately, but spoke with a bored look on his raised eyebrows. "What do you mean? That madman from the Si family is still dreaming. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him." Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 70. Lu Yao puffed up her eyes, her bright red lips imprinted on the smoke, which looked like a red rose in full bloom. It's just that the words he spoke were not so soft, and he said something careless and indifferent. Who knows, after all, he went crazy overnight. You think this person is so strange? He is not even married yet he says he has a child and wants to rob someone else's child. Lu Lin didn't have a good sense of the Si family member either. When Lu Ziyi was 5 years old, the way the young master of the Si family looked at Lu Ziyi was not a good one. Especially the Si family's education, the kind of indifference and arrogance revealed in the bones is not something ordinary people can bear. The entire Si family is like a silent monster, no one knows what they are thinking. I only know that they quietly do good things, but I never hear them speak. Is somewhat similar to Tang Wan, who cannot speak. Lu Yao sighed as she saw Lu Lin was in a daze. If possible, she didn't want her son to come into contact with Mr. Si. Aunt Kessie is so pitiful. Her husband died early in her early years, and she became the leader of the Si family alone. Her best friend died young, leaving a daughter for her to raise. However, that girl was bedridden all year round, and not many people saw her. I heard that she also went there a few years ago because her health reached its limit. The only son lost his legs in a car accident, and his temperament changed drastically and he became moody. If it weren't for his keen intuition about business, he probably wouldn't be able to carry the behemoth of the Si family. Finally, Aunt Si has a child she likes. She must not be disappointed. Furthermore, it is probably because her life has been bitter that she likes Tang Wan, who is a little bitter melon like her. Lu Lin did not agree immediately. He shouted to the kid downstairs, "Tang Tang." Tang Wan, who looked like a small red envelope, suddenly turned around and looked at Lu Lin, who was waving to him from the second floor. His eyes slowly lit up and he waved his seemingly short arm like Lu Lin. He was still shouting excitedly. "Ah." Lu Lin continued to ask, "Do you want to go to Aunt C's house to play?" "Aunt Si?" Tang Wan rummaged through his memory and found the grandma who seemed difficult to get along with. Did she invite herself to her house? Tang Wan tilted his head, hesitant. That grandma doesn't look like a person who likes to have fun. But maybe it's because the color on her body is too thin, so she looks particularly deserted. She lowered her head and tugged on the red coat on her body, thinking in her mind whether such a bright color could be considered warm. Would that grandma be a little happier? Tang Wan thought of this and nodded. She still likes that grandma. That grandma didn't have bad intentions, she was just not good at words. Lu Lin looked at Tang Wan's movements and gave an okay gesture in return. Then he turned to look at Lu Yao, looking lazy again. Okay, let's go. Lu Yao was a little surprised when she saw that her younger brother, who had always been a promiscuous man, had changed drastically. She put out the cigarette in her hand and looked at the two cubs playing below. Her usually sharp eyebrows softened a lot and said, "That's good. Marriage is rarely smooth sailing." Lu Ziyi took Tang Wan with him and told her about going to find Go 11 and Chen Shuo in a few days. After receiving a positive reply, he and his mother reluctantly said goodbye to Tang Wan. As he walked, he tapped his wrist, shook it, and shouted loudly, "Call me if you need anything." Lu Yao, who was walking beside him, raised her hand and slapped Lu Ziyi on the back of the head, saying, "You can do whatever you can." Lu Ziyi was accustomed to being slapped on the head by his mother. He covered the painful head and looked at Lu Yao with a somewhat disapproving expression. He said, "Mom, stop smoking." Lu Yao was slightly startled. When he wanted to say something, he heard Lu Ziyi's voice again. "I will grow up quickly and help you take care of the Lu family." Obviously Lu Ziyi also knew about the Si family, so he said these words to comfort Lu Yao. Lu Yao rubbed Lu Ziyi's head, raised her eyebrows, said nothing, and led Lu Ziyi away. The Lu family at the Lu family's old residence prepared many gifts for Tang Wan. They probably also knew that Tang Wan was a well-measured child, and the things he gave were quite practical. Tang Wan looked at the gifts piled up like a hill, her eyes like black grapes seemed to be filled with stars. This is the first time she has received so many gifts. There were so many that Tang Wan was almost drowned. Lu Lin saw that Tang Wan still wanted to open the gift, so he took 2 pairs of scissors and sat next to Tang Wan to accompany her. Shakes of one large and one small fell into the spacious room, and the housekeeper quietly closed the door. At such a warm time, don't disturb them with trivial things. Tang Wan and Lu Lin opened the gifts for a long time, and then in the evening, Lu Lin and Tang Wan put the gifts back into place. Finally, when the stars were twinkling, the two of them finished washing, and Lu Lin carried the sleepy Tang Wan back to the bedroom prepared for her in the old house. The ceiling can be opened, and there is a layer of glass hidden in the roof. When you open it, you can see the starry sky. The stars are within reach. The same will be true in the future. Tang Wan watched the door close with his peripheral vision and quietly opened his eyes. She actually couldn't sleep, but she thought Lu Lin was too tired, so she pretended to be sleepy. The adults need some face, Tang Wan knows. She quietly pressed the button on the bedside table, listened to the soft sound, and saw the ceiling above her head opening. The stars in the sky looked at Tang Wan and blinked at her. Tang Wan lay on the soft bed and made a wish to the bright moon. She thinks she should be a materialist. But at this time, she wanted to be single-minded. If God can hear your voice, then you must thank Him properly. Let her have a warm home. This is enough. The stars in the sky accompanied Tang Wan to sleep, and the dark night seemed no longer scary. A few days later, Tang Wan wore a blue dress of the same color as Lu Lin and went to Xi's house together. Along the way, Lu Lin kept telling Tang Wan not to get close to the young master of the Si family. At this point, Lu Lin paused for a moment, and then said, "You can just stay with me anyway." Tang Wan was obedient. She nodded vigorously, then raised a tablet wrapped in pink plush with what was written on it. "Does he eat children?" Lu Lin burst out laughing. Thinking about Si Huai's dead face eating a child, the comedy effect is too outstanding. So he just nodded, picked up the fragrant and soft Tang Wan, and said, "Well, he eats children, Tang Tang should stay away from him." Tang Wan blinked, knowing that Lu Lin was joking again. In today's society, how can anyone still eat children? It's obvious that I'm scaring myself. Dan Tang Wan always cooperated with Lu Lin. In life, you need to act stupid occasionally, so that you can have happy little flowers. Thanks to Kanako and Yuxia Mumweo for their rewards. Thanks to Lulu Ishan, Yunyo, Chiao Machuan, Feng Enran, Kinruo Zimo, don't disturb, kiss. Control. This is a point, Xiao's his 8 treasures for their monthly votes. Be generous and love you.